There comes a moment when you realize something most people never survive. No one is coming. No one will fund your vision. No one will push you when you're exhausted. And if you fail, no one will soften the fall. For most people, this realization breaks them. They collapse into resentment, distraction, and excuses. But Machiavelli saw something different. He understood that dependence is weakness, and isolation, when used correctly, is a weapon. This video is not about motivation. It's about learning how to operate without permission, without support, and without emotional debt, because the man who needs nothing cannot be controlled. Stay with me. By the end, you'll understand why being alone is not a disadvantage, it's leverage. The 0 point. There is a moment most people experience once and spend the rest of their lives trying to forget. The moment you realize no one is coming. No mentor, no investor, no cheerleader, no safety net. For most, this feels like abandonment, a personal failure, a cosmic injustice. They interpret the silence as rejection and retreat back into distraction, blame, or waiting. That's the mistake. The no one is coming moment is not a tragedy. It's a filter. It separates those who need permission from those who generate momentum. Dependence creates vulnerability because it places your progress in someone else's hands. And hands get tired. Hands get distracted. Hands change their mind. Support creates obligation. Obligation creates constraint. Even well-intended help comes with invisible terms, expectations, delays, compromises. The more people you rely on, the more you must manage their emotions, timing, and approval. This is why zero support is not weakness. It is leverage. Zero support means zero masters. No one to disappoint, no one to negotiate with, no one to dilute the vision to make it reasonable. Most people don't fail because they lack resources. They fail because they are still scanning for approval. They wait for encouragement before effort. They look for validation before commitment. They seek consensus before action. That waiting bleeds time. That scanning fractures focus. That approval-seeking hands power away before anything is built. At the 0 point, all of that ends. You stop asking, "Who will help me?" and start asking, "What can I do today without permission?" Isolation removes excuses. Silence removes performance. And responsibility becomes absolute. This is uncomfortable. But it's also clarifying. When no one is coming, every result belongs to you. Every failure teaches you directly. Every win compounds without dilution. You are no longer dependent. You are decisive. Comment, "No one is coming," or comment, "I choose leverage." Because once you stop waiting to be lifted, something else becomes possible. Why support is a hidden debt. Support is rarely free. It just hides its price well. Most people think help is neutral, even virtuous. But Machiavelli understood a harder truth. Help always comes with terms, even when no one says them out loud. Emotional support creates withdrawal power. The person who comforts you today can withhold that comfort tomorrow. And once your motivation is tied to reassurance, someone else controls your emotional stability. This is why dependence feels safe at first and restrictive later. Financial support creates ownership. Money is never just money. It's influence over pace, direction, and risk. When someone funds you, they gain a voice, sometimes a loud one, in decisions that should be yours alone. Your ambition becomes moderated to protect their comfort. Social support creates expectation management. The more people believe in you, the more you must perform consistency for them. You begin adjusting timelines, tone, and goals to maintain their confidence. Progress slows. Flexibility disappears. What started as encouragement becomes a cage made of good intentions. The more people help you, the less freely you can move. You hesitate before changing direction. You explain pivots that don't need explaining. You delay hard choices to avoid disappointing others. Machiavelli warned rulers against relying on auxiliary forces for this exact reason. If they fail, you fall with them. If they succeed, you become their prisoner. Most people never see this trade-off clearly. They interpret independence as loneliness instead of sovereignty. The unsupported man doesn't move faster because he's braver. He moves faster because there's nothing to manage except reality. No expectations, no approvals, no emotional contracts. Every decision is cleaner. Every mistake teaches directly. Every correction happens immediately. This produces something rare, hard learning. Supported people are cushioned from consequences. Unsupported people feel impact instantly, and impact accelerates growth. You don't need encouragement when feedback is immediate. You don't need reassurance when results are honest. This doesn't mean help is evil. It means help is expensive, and most people spend their freedom without realizing the cost. Once you see support as a hidden debt, you stop chasing it. You start building leverage instead, and this is why the unsupported man moves faster and learns harder lessons. Asymmetry, the lone operator advantage. Power does not always favor size, it favors speed. Machiavelli understood this long before modern organizations existed. Scale looks impressive, but scale is slow, and slowness is vulnerability. Teams require alignment. Alignment requires discussion. Discussion requires time. Every additional person introduces friction, opinions, delays, emotional management. Momentum leaks before action begins. Individuals require only discipline, one mind, one decision, one direction. This is the asymmetry. When you operate alone, you don't need permission. You don't need consensus. You don't need buy-in. No meetings, no compromise, no waiting. Isolation forces intelligence. When there's no one to outsource thinking to, you sharpen your own. When there's no backup plan, creativity increases. When mistakes cost you personally, adaptation accelerates. This pressure is not cruelty, it's efficiency. Lone operators learn faster because reality corrects them immediately. There is no committee to soften feedback, no process to absorb blame. Every move teaches. This is why lone operators become asymmetrical threats. They don't compete on size, they compete on velocity. While large groups debate direction, the lone operator has already executed, adjusted, and moved again. Machiavelli warned rulers that armies borrowed from others were dangerous. They lacked loyalty and speed. If they lost, you were defeated. If they won, you became dependent. The same logic applies here. When your success relies on others moving in sync, your progress is capped. When your success relies on yourself, momentum compounds. Speed creates surprise. Surprise creates advantage, and advantage doesn't need numbers. But there is a weakness most lone operators don't see at first. They move fast, then leak energy by talking. They explain plans too early. They seek feedback before execution. They share ambition with people who have no stake in the outcome. That leak slows everything, because speed means nothing if your energy leaks through your mouth. Silence is what protects asymmetry, and once you understand that, the advantage sharpens. The ghost phase. Silence is not emptiness, it is compression. Machiavelli understood that power concentrates when it is not dispersed, and nothing disperses energy faster than talking. Talking releases dopamine. Your brain rewards you for saying you will act, as if you already did. That small chemical reward kills urgency. Execution slows. Focus dissolves. This is why most people fail before they even begin. They talk away the pressure that would have forced them to work. Public ambition does not invite help. It invites doubt. People question timelines. They offer realistic advice. They project their own limits onto your vision. Even supportive comments fracture momentum. Silence avoids this entirely. In the ghost phase, you do not announce. You do not explain. You do not hint. You work. Silence builds internal pressure. When a goal has nowhere to escape through speech, it stays inside. It accumulates as restlessness, tension, and discomfort. This discomfort is not a problem. It is fuel. Pressure forces action. When supported people get tired, they talk. When unsupported people get tired, they build. No audience means no performance. You stop managing perception. You stop rehearsing explanations. You stop adjusting behavior to look impressive. All that remains is output. This is the ghost phase. Invisible, uncelebrated, uninterrupted. Machiavelli advised rulers to conceal intention until action was unavoidable, not because secrecy was virtuous, but because visibility invites interference. When no one knows what you're doing, no one can slow you down. No opinions to manage, no expectations to meet, no emotional labor to perform, just work. The ghost phase feels lonely. That's the cost. But loneliness is temporary. Leverage is not. Those who cannot tolerate silence leak ambition early. They seek reassurance. They want witnesses, and witnesses dilute power. Silence sharpens focus, but obsession is what makes it lethal. When silence compresses ambition long enough, it turns into something else. Relentless execution. That's what separates the ghost from the crowd. Obsession as a requirement. When no one supports you, motivation becomes unreliable. Encouragement disappears. External pressure vanishes. What replaces it is obsession. Obsession is not a personality trait. It's a survival response. When you have no backup, no cushion, and no applause, mastery is no longer optional. It's the only way forward. Encouragement is a borrowed fuel. Obsession is internal. Supported people work when they feel inspired. Unsupported people work because stopping feels dangerous. This is why obsession replaces encouragement. You don't ask, "Do I feel like doing this?" You ask, "What happens if I don't?" That question sharpens behavior immediately. To succeed without support, you must become technically undeniable, not liked, not hyped, not full of potential, undeniable. Skill closes arguments. Competence silences doubt. When your output is precise, fast, and effective, explanation becomes unnecessary. Results speak without translation. This is where generalists gain power. People are taught to specialize early. Specialists depend on systems. Systems fail. The lone operator cannot afford that. When you build everything yourself, product, strategy, execution, correction, you become irreplaceable. Not because you are perfect, but because you understand the entire machine. You see connections others miss. You solve problems without waiting. You adapt without approval. Knowledge earned alone becomes permanent. No shortcut learning. No outsourced thinking. No borrowed frameworks. When you struggle through a problem for weeks and finally solve it, that solution embeds itself into your nervous system. It's yours. This kind of knowledge doesn't disappear under pressure. It compounds. Obsession accelerates this process. You think about the work while walking, while eating, while trying to sleep. Not because you're undisciplined, but because the problem hasn't released you yet. This level of immersion is uncomfortable. It isolates you further. It makes you intense. That's the cost. But obsession without structure turns into chaos. Raw intensity burns energy fast. Directionless effort exhausts even the most driven people. Power doesn't come from obsession alone. It comes from obsession contained, and that's where structure becomes unavoidable. Self-governance, becoming your own authority. Freedom is dangerous without discipline. Most people collapse not because they lack opportunity, but because no one is watching them. When external structure disappears, weakness surfaces. Machiavelli understood this clearly. A man without a ruler must become his own law, or be ruled by impulse. When there is no boss, no deadlines, and no supervision, motivation becomes unreliable. You cannot negotiate with yourself every morning. That's why protocols replace motivation. A protocol is not a goal, it's a rule. Rules don't ask how you feel, they execute regardless. Unsupported men survive by building internal governance. They decide in advance what happens when resistance appears. Wake-up time, work blocks, information intake, review, no debate. Immediate consequences accelerate learning. When you miss work, you feel it instantly. When you delay, progress stalls visibly. There is no buffer. This harsh feedback is not cruelty, it's clarity. Supported systems absorb failure. Unsupported systems expose it. Exposure forces adaptation. You learn quickly because the cost is personal. You stop lying to yourself because there's no one else to deceive. Harsh self-command produces long-term mercy. Comfort now creates suffering later. Discipline now creates freedom later. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must sometimes act against comfort to preserve stability. The same applies internally. You deny yourself ease in the short term to prevent collapse in the long term. This is not self-hatred, it's stewardship. You are managing an asset, yourself. Without discipline, obsession decays into chaos. With discipline, obsession becomes force. You stop drifting. You stop rationalizing. You start executing predictably. Over time, something shifts. The world responds differently to consistency. Opportunities appear because you are reliable. Confidence grows because promises are kept, even when no one sees. You don't need praise. You trust your own word. Once discipline hardens, the external world begins to change, and the final stage emerges naturally. The end state, sovereignty. Sovereignty is not isolation. It is ownership. Machiavelli's final lesson was never about domination over others. It was about owning your outcome without needing permission from anyone. This is the end state. People return only after success appears, not during the uncertainty, not during the construction, only when results make belief convenient. This reveals something most people learn too late. Support is often conditional. It arrives when risk is gone, when momentum is visible, when association becomes profitable. By the time it appears, its value has already expired. The sovereign understands this without resentment. There is no anger in distance, no bitterness in restraint. You don't reject people. You simply stop reorganizing your life around them. You keep distance without explanation. Because explanation invites negotiation, and negotiation implies dependency. Sovereignty means your direction no longer bends around approval. You don't need agreement to proceed. You don't need validation to commit. You don't need witnesses to work. You move because the decision is made. This is where true power forms. True power is not a network, it is being the asset. Networks collapse, people change, incentives shift, but skill stays, discipline stays, judgment stays. When you are the asset, loss does not end you, it resets you. You know that if everything vanished tomorrow, contacts, money, status, you could rebuild it again, because the capability was never external. That certainty creates calm. You stop rushing, you stop explaining, you stop chasing. Others feel this shift. They approach differently. They test less. They respect boundaries they were never told about, not because you demanded it, but because your independence is unmistakable. This is sovereignty, not loud, not dramatic, unshakable. You don't need to prove strength. You demonstrate it by continuing regardless of who shows up. And that is why permission becomes irrelevant. Comment, "I rely on myself," or comment, "No one is coming." Subscribe if you're building strength without applause. Iron Psyche isn't about comfort, it's about control.